Good evening and welcome to the CultCast, the best 30-plus minute Apple conversation you're going to hear all week long. I will be your host today, D. Griffin Jones. Joining me today, some say he's blind as a bat, but with his heightened senses, he can smell typos from a mile away. It's our managing editor, Lewis Wallace.
All right, I got a joke this week. Great.
I had the free time to write one. Also joining us, the 1980s British punk spirit stays with you forever. He doesn't take orders from anyone. That's why he simply refuses to podcast from a quiet, private room. Leander rejoins the show. Welcome back.
It's quiet now. Everyone's left.
He wanted to test the new Workout Buddy feature in watchOS 26, so he ran a 5K, realized the update hadn't finished yet, so he just ran another one casually. He says it's all for the show. Graham Bauer is joining us. Welcome.
Hello, a 5K is nothing.
Yeah, sure. Says you. Also joining us, he spent last night rooting and installing OpenSUSE Linux on his refrigerator. It's Charlie Sorrell. Welcome.
It's I need to reboot my fridge.
Oh yeah, didn't quite finish the process. So it's WWDC week. How are we all feeling? Let's take broad opening statements from the class.
I think that the iPad update is fantastic, and I've been using that for a couple of days. And I'm also into some of the stuff on the Mac. The Spotlight, the new Spotlight stuff is really, really nice. You can kind of use it as a command line for lots of your Mac now. You can really... It's taken on a lot of features of things like Launch Bar, Alfred, and Quicksilver, which is still around. And I guess we'll dig into it later, but yeah, I'm quite liking that. And also the clipboard history on the Mac, which is amazing, because that's something that is... Whenever anyone uses it, you can't go without it. And it seems crazy that it's not built in. And now it is. So you don't have to kind of recommend some weird app to somebody and make them learn it. It's just there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why do you think it took them so long to implement that?
They couldn't be bothered, I guess.
It seems like it's such a great and useful feature.
I think...
And copy and paste is so essential. It's so central to the whole, desktop computing experience.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a little bit like they've done with the software this year, what they did with the MacBook Pro, like a few years ago. When it came back and it got all of the ports and it had the SD card slot in it, and it just did everything that we wanted it to do. They made an amazing computer, and we're all like, thank God, finally they've given up on those stupid keyboards and removed it. And Johnny Ive's gone, so they're not. The war on ports is over, and it seems similar. It seems they're kind of doing that with the software now. All of these things that we asked for on the iPad. Actual useful kind of nerdy things, but which are really not that nerdy. Well, they're only nerdy because you have to install, other software to do them. Now they're built in; they're really useful. Everybody gets to use these useful things.
Yeah, I like the windowing on the iPad too. Like it is crazy. I mean, that whole Stage Manager and then the split screen thing. The split screen thing was so confusing. I could never ever get it to work right, and it was such a they were bending over backwards to try and make it not Mac-like when the answer was obvious, wasn't it? Just make it Mac-like and be done with it.
It just works. Although you still can't put your windows exactly where you want them.
You can't? What do you mean?
Well, you can more or less, but sometimes it just you let go of it and it shifts it by a few pixels. And it's like, oh, come on. Why can't I have it there?
I feel like Craig Federighi put that in just to piss you off.
Well, it worked.
Is it some bug? I hadn't, although admittedly I've only just played around with it a little bit last night, but I didn't experience that. Do you think it's a bug, or is it part of the design?
I don't know, really. It does seem a bit odd. I mean, it's not like, because you can put things not lined up, so it's not like it forces you to line them up. You can put two windows next to each other and have them slightly out of line. It doesn't snap them in that way. And sometimes if you put the window, you place it carefully and it just stays exactly there. So I don't know if it's a bug. The only reason I was testing it out is because Stage Manager was a nightmare for that. You had like three positions you could put it or something like this.
Mm-hmm. It always wanted enough of each window visible so that you could tap it if you wanted to. They didn't want anything to disappear.
No.
And it sounds like now they're doing a little bit of that, but maybe not as aggressively.
Yeah.
Lewis, broad feelings, WWDC Keynote. What do you think?
I'm so tired. You know what I think? I think they need a new format because I think that it's so rapid paced and so it's like you're drinking from a fire hose. It's just all this information. And I mean, even when it's your job to sit there and stare at it, it's impossible. And I found myself my eyes are glazing over when I rewatched it, or didn't rewatch it. I had to drop out in the middle to do some work, right, during the day of the thing. But I rewatched it later that day, and I was just going, God, it's just boom, 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 rapid fire. And I was thinking, like, they could almost have just done it all in AI. None of those people actually seem real anymore. It's like it's soulless. It's just, so that's iOS 9 or whatever, 26, I guess it is now. Everything wraps like that. I don't know. I ranted about this years ago. Like these canned things, there's no suspense. There's no nothing. I mean, I love the gimmicky fun stuff, the intro and that kind of thing. But the presentations themselves just seem so canned. I mean, well, they literally are canned, but it's just
that might be why. That might be why.
I mean, do you not feel that same way? I mean, I like the look of all the stuff I saw, but oh God, really?
Yeah, because I went back and watched it like you a second time. The first time around, you're working, and so you're trying to. You've got some work to do, so you have to concentrate on it. But then when you can sit back and watch it, like as a regular person, as a spectator, like as a piece of theater, I thought it was pretty good. I kind of liked all the the fast pace and all of the different features they roll out. You get it's a huge platform now. It's no longer like a little handful of products, and they're so complex. I mean, there's so many features they're adding. I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was actually really pretty good. They're really well put together, quick, snappy overviews of a whole bunch of new stuff that's coming. So,
I mean, they definitely are well put together. I mean, I'm not suggesting they're not well crafted. I don't know, man. They're just so fast and furious. The one thing they did that was really great was how they kept, reinforcing like, and all this macOS gets all these other great features that you've already seen. They were really good about that, which I don't actually remember them being that good about that in the past.
It's nice as well that they don't go through all of those features again. It's like, okay, we've seen that.
Yeah. But like I know other times, and maybe again, I'm slightly distracted day of the show because doing all a million other things. But I oftentimes in the past would find myself going, well, is such and such feature that they talked about in the Messages app on the phone, is that coming on the Mac or not?
Yeah.
And they did an excellent job this time of just basically saying, it gets all these other things. Which
also, a lot of stuff is on everything now as well. I mean, since since everything's on Apple Silicon, and I think the new 3 of the new apps are all Catalyst apps, the Mac ones. So they're iOS first. I can't remember which ones. I read this on Mastodon.
No, that's right. Phone, Journal, and I think one of the other ones. Oh no, the new FaceTime app is all 3 of those are Catalyst apps.
Yeah, so that's
cool.
Cool.
The liquid glass stuff looked awesome in the keynote. I don't know. I mean, I've read a lot of complaining on X and everywhere, and of course because I have to get my job done, have not installed any of these betas, so I haven't actually seen them in real life. But so, what do you guys think about that? I mean, is it?
Well, because I have to get my job done. Unfortunately, I have installed the beta.
I can't believe you're actually able to participate in the podcast.
Well, yeah, because that's done on my Mac, and I don't want to touch macOS Tahoe with a 20-foot pole.
Oh, so you didn't do it on all of them. I see. Okay.
No, just my iPhone and the Vision Pro, because again, there's not really, we'll get to this later, there's not really enough new in Vision OS to really necessitate the beta being dangerous.
Well, it's not like you ever use it anyway,
I've always
right?
done that.
Does any?
I use it several times a week easily, but yeah, I mean, between doing almost all of my work on my Mac and spending the evenings either on the Vision Pro or the Apple TV, I don't actually use my phone a lot, I think, compared to most people. So I don't really mind sacrificing the battery life a little bit for the next 3 months, and having most things be slightly broken.
I guess the thing that for the phone is the banking apps and things like this.
Right.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Because, it's generally that stuff is on the phone rather than an iPad or something.
Yeah, that's true. Well, banking, you can all do that on the web. And most of the banking apps are just like crummy web apps anyways, and they're pretty much the same. But
you can't. Yeah. What if you can't pay for something?
Yeah, or if all your savings disappear in a pool of liquid glass.
Well, that's a risk that comes with the job.
I'm just thinking about this occasional Vision Pro use you mentioned. Do you have it hung on a peg in the bathroom and you put it on whenever you go and sit on the toilet?
I actually have
it's a little personal.
I'm going to have a hard time unseeing that.
It sits in my living room. I have like a large sort of like a corner table that it sits on that's in the corner of the room so that it's not at risk of being like knocked over by the dogs or anything. But
it just seems like a perfect kind of toilet computer, really.
I will say it is good for that if you already happen to be wearing it. You don't have to worry about like holding your phone with you or like getting dirty.
Exactly, and you're not moving very much, so you're not going to get tangled up, hopefully.
You can bring an invisible window and just like sit it right in front of you.
That was the original spec for the iPad, wasn't it? Steve Jobs, he wanted something he could do his email on while he was taking his morning constitutional.
Yep.
One thing I learned from the keynote is that baggy pants are in. Did you notice that?
Yeah,
everyone was wearing big baggy pants. Now I see them everywhere. Like, my son has a bunch of friends around. They're all wearing big baggy pants. So I'm like, I'm not really attuned to fashion, as you can tell. And that's a thing. I quite like the revolving cast of characters too. They seem to be new people every year. Like, what happened to
I like them. There were some good ones this year.
Yeah.
I feel though that the personality is drained out of them though. Like these people, they look like really interesting people, but their speech has been coached to a point at which they're not them anymore. You kind of want to say, blink if you're okay. It's like that. I just feel like I would love if Apple let the personality come out a bit more rather than them all like, we're incredibly excited and we're thrilled and all this excessive positivity. I mean, of course, it has to be positive, but I don't know, a little bit of quirkiness, a bit of personality.
It used to be that when people would come on new people would come on to present on the live shows, they'd just be terrified.
Yeah,
right.
So this is
right.
So it's either
and I think
we
liked seeing I liked seeing the fear in their eyes, and I missed that.
Yeah, right. That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's like how many takes did they do it? The poor woman who talks about the phone app. It's just like the 57th take, and it's all been boiled down and cut down so it's tight as can be, and there's just no time to breathe in those things. It's just blah 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 blah. The same locations, the same. I started wondering if all the locations were CGI. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's the Apple Park, but who knows? I mean, it just all seems so synthetic.
Well, they started using a new location, the new observatory, which is like one of the new buildings that they built on the edge of the campus.
Yeah, I saw a tweet about that. So someone said, we're not allowed to take pictures, but here's 4 pictures. And then they have 4 pictures inside of it. And I'm like, what is it? It's not like a real observatory, is it?
They call it that because it has like a big sort of like bubble-shaped window that overlooks like the main building. But the general idea is that I think this is more like a private press area where they can have like, briefings and stuff that's a little more suited than the Steve Jobs Theater. Like it has a...
Well, what are they doing with the Steve Jobs Theater now? I mean, it's got to be empty, right? They haven't used that for a while.
I think there was they do like company events there. And I know that on Tuesday night, they had a private screening of the F1 movie there with selected members of the press.
They probably rent it out for bar mitzvahs and things too. I also heard that observatory. That's where they sacrifice the goats.
Right.
Well, before we get into the thick of it any more that we already have, let's thank our sponsor of this episode, Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one service where you can make your own website. You can start a completely personalized website with their new guided design system, Squarespace Blueprint. Choose from professionally curated layout and styling options to build a unique online presence from the ground up, tailored to your brand or business. That's very important because you don't want to have a cookie cutter site that looks the same as everybody else. Although you're picking from a starting point using their system, it's totally customizable and you can make it your own voice and appearance and style and brand. And it's optimized for every device. You don't have to build a manual mobile version of your site anymore. It's not 2011. Squarespace is the modern service. Easily launch your website and get discovered fast with integrated, optimized SEO tools, so you show up more often in organic searches to more people and grow the way you want. They have flexible payment options. You can make checkout seamless for your customers with simple but powerful payment tools, accept credit cards, Apple Pay, PayPal, and in eligible countries, offer customers the option to buy now and pay later with Afterpay and ClearPay. That's part of what makes Squarespace an all-in-one service. You don't have to build out your own payment system. You don't have to integrate with your own calendar plugins or whatever like that. It is all built into this service. You can sell exclusive content on your site by adding a paywall to sell memberships or courses, sell files your customers can download, PDFs, music, ebooks, podcasts. Get started at squarespace.com/cultcast for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain with code CultCast at checkout. That's squarespace.com/cultcast for 10% off. So I guess let's go in Keynote order. We start with Craig Federighi racing an F1 car around Apple Park, tying in with the F1 movie, and we cut to Tim Cook and he says, F1, baby. What do we think about that?
I can't believe we had another Air Force One joke. I'm like so over jokes about Craig Federighi's hair. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't care. I just don't care.
He's got great hair, though. I mean, it is good.
I'm jealous.
Yeah.
I heard that was an F2 car. I saw that somewhere. I don't know what the heck the difference is, but maybe F1s are too dangerous.
Too expensive to film with.
Was this the bit where was this a bit with the golf cart, or was that later?
That was
that's a bit
later.
I'll say the golf cart one was pretty funny.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. But I've got a question for all of you Americans and American dwellers.
That's like everyone except me. You're deliberately just excluding me, but I can handle that.
Good. Well, you'll see why. When he brakes in his golf cart, the tires squeal. Whenever I watch an American TV show or movie, somebody just pulls slowly away from the curb or in a parking garage, and the tires squeal.
Yeah.
Well, that never ever happens in any other country. So is that something that happens? Or is that what your cars do? Do they just always
We have better
squeal?
tires.
Maybe that's it. You've got cheap tires.
No, they're better. They're grippy as can be.
And our cars are bigger and stronger with 800 horsepower. You just lightly feather the gas in it every single time.
Okay.
I think Americans tend to drive much more sedately than Europeans. I mean, there's nothing more dangerous than like some European capital, like Rome or something like that.
Palermo.
Yeah,
my God.
And Americans all drive like old ladies. It's very, very sedate. It's actually really nice once you get used to it. At first, you become enraged. You're like, why is this person in front of me? Well, hurry it up. But then, if you force yourself to be zen, and it's much nicer.
Mm-hmm. I mean, personally, I used to speed all the time, but then I realized, it's just much more relaxing to just let everybody pass you. Just drive the speed limit, and then you don't have to worry. You don't have to pass anybody. You don't have to think, oh, no, if I get in front of this person, then that person behind me is going to be mad and they won't catch up, and you don't have to play like that,
Yeah, me too. I become one of those infuriating drivers. I can tell, because people pull up right behind me so close, and I can tell I'm really infuriated them, and that makes me go even slower. I love it.
I know, yeah. That's great. And you get better mileage that way. But, yeah, in all seriousness, they just add those tire squealing sound effects literally every time, no matter how slowly somebody's driving, just because it makes it more exciting.
Even just when they're parked and they just cut to a picture of the car.
Yeah. And the other thing is, like, in movies and TV shows, they always add like that. Whenever somebody like locks their car, it always makes like a chirping sound for some reason.
Well, when
like
people touch
sort of sound,
touch their phones, it always beeps as well. So
Yeah. But like car alarms, like locks and stuff like that, it usually just sounds exactly the same as the horn. I've never known a car to like actually make like that, like, stock sound effect chirping noise when you hit the lock button.
Oh, I've heard that.
That's how it works in Europe.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you learn something new every day. Let's move on to Liquid Glass, their new visual design style. How do we feel about Liquid Glass?
I think it's great. I really do like it. And the legibility complaints are way overblown. I mean, it's a bunch of hot takes. Someone saw some screenshots where the notifications were obscured, and it's like, oh my God, Steve Jobs would never ship this. I saw a really funny tweet about they had a compilation of all the really
right.
dodgy interfaces that Apple shipped over the years. That stainless steel look for a while that started in QuickTime, and Aqua itself. Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, Apple has done a whole bunch of extremely ugly interfaces over the years. They certainly have. Nothing looks more dated now than like an old iMac or something like that, right? It's like it just screams 90s, and the same with Aqua too. And this is Aqua Redux, but I saw some, it does make the fluidity of it, and like there was a screenshot today of if there's a white light shining through it, it actually refracts into the colors of the rainbow.
Yeah,
which is like. That is just mind-bending, like the attention, that attention to detail. And clearly it's the basis for, a whole bunch of next-gen UIs that are going to come in AR glasses and, all these other, devices that are going to be coming up in the future. And I think it's like a fabulous, fantastic start, and I couldn't be more excited about it. And it looks even better on the Mac than it does on the iPhone, I think. Like, my Mac just looks gorgeous. I can't believe how beautiful it looks. I got that crazy excitement, when you get it and you're like, oh my God, it's a new device. Until, of course, like, nothing works. Like, Slack doesn't work and it can't do any work on it. But, it does look good.
But you can look really good not working.
Yeah. You said, Leander, that there's no problem with the legibility of it. But at the beginning of the podcast, when we were trying to get going, you couldn't even see the green camera icon in the menu bar.
Well, I'm actually I'm actually on a machine that's not running one of the betas, which is why I'm able to join this podcast.
I think people got scared that, like, in the demo video, a lot of this liquid glass stuff is completely much more translucent. It lets in much more of the background than before. Things aren't as blurred as before, and although they've dialed it back a little bit on legibility, they've afforded themselves, much more room for beauty, and it is still easy to read a lot of the time because, it's clear.
A lot of the time is quite a qualification.
I
think even if you look at Apple's accessibility guidelines, then Apple is breaking them. I mean, it is an accessibility nightmare. You look at the amount of contrast between the text and the background, and that's one of the kind of key metrics to analyze in terms of how legible text is. And we've got white on light grey all over the place at the moment. And of course, these are betas, so Apple may well address these accessibility issues. But I personally, I don't think it's overblown to say that there are big accessibility issues right now with liquid glass. I mean, especially looking at things like in the music app, when the name of the artist is in white text on liquid glass, if you've got white album art behind that, it's very low contrast, and that wouldn't pass muster with Apple's own accessibility guidelines. So I don't know if they're going to do something to address that. But as it stands, I think in Europe it might not even be compliant with the law in terms of there are laws in the UK, the Disability Discrimination Act, that require that you take reasonable steps to make sure that your product is accessible, and the web accessibility guidelines and complying with them is usually what's considered to be necessary to be compliant with that legislation. And Apple is not compliant with that right now. And I as a designer, I have mixed feelings actually, because I'm a graphic designer myself, and I love putting text on images. And I often have clients saying, "Oh, that's a little bit hard to read," and I disagree with them. And it frustrates me sometimes if a client wants something to be so visible that you have to put like great big white backgrounds behind black text, and it really limits your options as a designer. So I do think there's a lot of trade-offs going on there. But I think right now it's pretty clear that Apple has stepped across a whole bunch of accessibility lines. And I was thinking, how do they justify that? There are obviously settings in iOS that you can go in and increase the contrast. And so I suspect maybe they think that they're safe because they've got those settings for people who need it. But from past experience, if you enable those settings, you kind of get a subpar experience. The design is not so well thought through when you enable those kinds of settings. And so I don't know, the trade-off here is I guess they're targeting youngsters with excellent eyesight.
Well, having used it, there's a big difference between looking at static images of it and even watching their keynote video and using it yourself, because although a lot of the backgrounds are a little more clear than before, seeing it in motion, like it's really easy to separate like the letter forms that are static on like a toolbar at the bottom and the background that's like blurring and moving behind it. It's much easier to differentiate it than you might think. And also there's the accessibility setting, like the reduced transparency option makes it look less like glass and more like the frosted gray texture material that things have been made from before. So and those are universal because those are all because the liquid glass material is like a system element. So like when you enable reduced transparency, all of the liquid glass parts of the interface are going to turn like that frosted gray material, whether you have it.
Call it cataracts mode.
Jeez.
I saw somewhere that they was it in the keynote or maybe it was a tweet I saw that they have an accessibility. The VP of accessibility or whoever it was, was reportedly heavily involved. So I got the impression from something I saw, like I said, I can't remember where, that that was one of the central things that they took into account while designing it was, accessibility. And that would sort of ring true given their commitment to, I mean, at least I believed it. I mean, it might have been some unconfirmed tweet, but, it rang true because, Apple of all companies has paid a lot of attention to accessibility.
I think that's true. Apple does have a really great record on accessibility. I also think it's true there are some issues with accessibility in liquid glass, but I mean, we've seen this before when they've introduced new UIs in the betas. There's lots of finessing that happens before they actually ship it. So some of the issues that exist right now may well be addressed by the time it ships. But I'm pretty sure, whenever you get white on light grey, that's never okay. I love it. As a designer, I love it. And there's nothing that I saw in the keynote that I had any trouble reading. I just know from working in graphic design for years that this is going to be a problem for some people. And
it makes
so
everything
I was surprised.
It makes everything look like Daring Fireball.
Right. Well, not true, because the text size has gotten bigger and the spacing is more generous.
Oh, okay. So that's the opposite of Daring Fireball.
Yeah. Which is actually one of my problems with it, if I'll be honest. Like on the first page of like the settings screen, you used to be able to see like, your name at the top section, and then like half of like the next section after that. But now like the spacing is so generous. I'll cover up the family screen here. Like you only really see the first section and maybe like the first like line item of the second group of settings there. Like the spacing is so lenient that like our phone screens keep getting bigger, but also like the spacing of any of these like system lists keeps getting like wider and wider and bigger.
Yeah.
And I even have the text size on my phone turned all the way down, but like despite that, like the size of each list element is just huge now. Well, which is one of my problems.
On the layouts, one of the things that really struck me is, when iOS 7 came out and they had an edge-to-edge design and everything went right to the edges of the screen and there was no padding or margins or anything. It used up the whole screen. And then slowly what we've had since iOS 7 is more padding and more margins added. And we had these tiled user interfaces and so forth. But what we now have with this latest version is even the sidebars have margin to the left of them. It's like, and I think there's margin underneath the dock as well. So everything is getting more and more padding. Like I think, if we fast forward to like 20 years from now, then like Apple design will just be everything kind of, spaced apart like it's COVID-19 and social distancing.
It looks really good on the iPad though. I'm running it on the 12. The 13-inch iPad Pro, my old one. It looks really, really nice. I was looking in the settings app because Griffin mentioned it, and I don't know if you can really see. Well, it doesn't make much. No, but it looks a lot better than it used to. I think that the buttons I haven't really dug into it yet, into the settings that much, but in general, it looks really nice. It looks spacious, but the information density is good. I don't have mine set to be like big sized text yet, but I've got more to say about the iPad stuff later. But we're on liquid glass right now, so.
One other thing to say about liquid glass, from my perspective, is Apple design tends to be very, very influential with graphic designers. You know, when they launch a new visual style, then you start to see other companies all around the world echoing, is a polite way to say it, what Apple's doing visually. And I think one of the things that's interesting about liquid glass is it's much, much harder to replicate. It's not something that you could easily put together in Figma or in Photoshop, because they're actually... I don't exactly know how they do it, but it would have to be something they've done programmatically at a system level. So it's not just like the liquid glass is blurring the image behind. As you said, Leander, that you get these kind of spectrographic things. It's like it's ray tracing the light and distorting it as it moves through the glass and refracting the light. And that's very, very hard to reproduce without actually 3D modeling. You know, and so I think it raises the bar, and I think what Apple's introduced here is something that's going to be... I'm sure lots of people will find crude ways to replicate it. I'm already thinking of crude ways to replicate it. But to actually really, in an animated way, replicate this right now is going to be a bit of a challenge. And I bet the likes of Adobe are thinking about that, thinking about tools to enable people to do it.
Replicating is going to be much harder than just using the system UI elements anyway. So like what Apple has done here is they've almost like planted like a flag in every app that says, you know, this element is using our system APIs. Yeah. This app isn't, and it gets nothing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So it'll be much easier to really be able to explain the difference to somebody who doesn't understand what, you know, any of those words mean. They'll be like, oh yeah, this is an app that's using Apple system buttons. This is using some crummy cross-platform thing that they develop parallel with Android. But on that note, let's move on to the iOS 26 unique features. We have the spatial scenes that you can now set as your lock screen and wallpaper, the new camera app, the new Safari app, which is a return to the iOS 15 beta Safari with the super minimal tab bar, all that. How do we feel
I didn't
about
like
the new
Safari
features of
so
iOS?
far on either the Mac or the iPad. Much harder to see the tabs, in fact, to make them out. Like I couldn't tell where the tabs were. And especially when it went into dark mode. Like last night I was on my iPad and I had a bunch of tabs open and I couldn't tell what the hell was going on. I'm hoping they address that.
Yeah, it is hard to differentiate the tabs in dark mode.
But who used the camera app? Didn't someone use the camera app? I haven't touched it yet.
I've used the new camera app and it's interesting. So the nice thing is that it's now like much faster to switch between all of the different modes. Like, you know, they have portrait mode, cinematic mode, slow motion mode, panoramic mode. And now you can just like smoothly drag your finger across it and it'll like swipe between all of them. That's much faster. I was kind of hoping that they would redo that user interface of like swiping left and right between this like horizontally scrolling list. They haven't really rethought that, which is a little disappointing to me. But I mean, the overall user interface is generally like much simpler than before. At first you just see like the two buttons, photo, video, tap to take a picture. You tap on the like photo or video picker to have all your settings. It's pretty simple. I haven't left the house much this week, so I haven't taken many pictures, but I do like where they're going with it.
Yeah, I found the old interface was really confusing. It was like it was way too. It was hard to find out where all the different settings were, and every time I wanted to change the zoom, it would go into a different mode. And then, oh my God, camera control! You know, the camera control button. You accidentally, get into. You accidentally press or long press that, and you get into some different mode. Oh my goodness, game over. What am I doing now? Can't even take a picture. It's awful. In fact, the best thing I liked was pressing to hold on the shutter button. You know, pressing to hold to take a video. I mean, that seemed to me like the best UI for switching between photo and video that anyone's ever invented.
Mm-hmm. You can thank Snapchat for that. I think they pioneered that.
Okay, yeah.
Have any of you tried the new phone app with their unified design?
Yeah, I like that. I like that too. Although someone had a good criticism, like it lists all your recents. You get your favorites. You know, the people you call the most at the top. But then you get a list of your recent calls, and the recent it's kind of useful. But more often than not, it's like spam call. Here's another scam, whatever, the bank, some bills, people you don't want to talk to. Maybe the voicemail would have been better there instead of the recent calls, because that's kind of more, useful. But yeah, so far it's pretty good. I think it was a really clever idea to shake that up, because, so often it's buried all that stuff is all buried at the tabs at the bottom, like in voicemails too. I think I have 160 voicemails or something I haven't listened to.
Jeez.
Which I might want to go take a look at. But seeing that kind of a bit more front and center, I would prefer. But so far, I liked it a lot. And then I saw somewhere today that you get some haptic feedback when someone answers the call now.
Oh, really?
Which sounded kind of interesting. I haven't experienced it myself, but
that sounds like a really good idea.
One thing it's really interesting how I think Apple has been burned by the Photos app redesign last year. So now when you first launch the phone app, it has like one of those tips that pops up that says, hey, there's a new design available if you want to enable that. And you can switch to it, or you can like switch back and just keep using the old app. Like they're making it opt-in now.
Oh, okay.
Which is very interesting.
After the horror of last year's photo app.
Yeah, and speaking of the Photos app, it's no longer one giant continuous scrolling view. You now have the tab bar that lets you switch between your library and collections.
I was very happy to see them revert to that.
Well, what I actually miss about the old design is that although they have the tab bar back, if you want to switch between the two, the only part of the screen where you can do that is that little navigation bar in the lower left. I kind of miss being able to swipe between them. And I submitted a feedback to Apple suggesting that like they can keep the tab bar there. That's all well and good. Keep the people happy who don't understand the swiping gestures. But I should still be able to swipe down from my library to get to collections and swipe up from the collections to get to my library. Because the swipe gesture you can do anywhere from the middle of the screen. It's much easier to do. It sounds like nobody else agrees.
I think they nailed it with the original iPhone, and I love the tabs along the bottom. And I almost never like it when Apple tries to curate what they think I'm interested in, because they don't know what I'm interested in. It's like with the Mail app when they introduced how it triages it into different categories. And I tried to leave that on for a couple of hours just to get my head around what it was. And it's like, nope, this is too annoying. Turn the whole thing off.
Couple of hours? Wow.
I didn't even make it that far. Mine was off after a couple of minutes.
I was trying to like it, I was trying to be open-minded to something new. But so I don't like Apple curating things for me. It's like I want to have each thing in its own tab, and I will, decide what I'm going to look at.
It seems that with the apps that, like the Photos app, things that show you things that you've already got, it's that they kind of seem to be wanting to keep your engagement up, like a website, like an Instagram or something like this. And so instead of just being a list of stuff that's easy to get to, your recent pictures, finding all the pictures of your dog or your husband or whatever, it's all of these other bits and pieces in there. Here's your memories, here's this, and putting them front and center gets a bit annoying because, like Graham says, it's like that's not probably. I mean, it might be what some people want, but it's not what everybody wants. So it's just going to annoy a lot of people as well. And I think the Photos app has got worse and worse the more they've added to it. I mean, I'm not saying that it's just only been bad new features. There's a lot of stuff I really like in there. Like the search is excellent, the lookup is really good, all sorts of good things. But I used to write a lot of how-tos, and when I was writing how-tos at Cult of Mac, and the Photos app was a rich source of those because there's so many hidden features that are just impossible to find. If you want to find out how to add a face to the to the Faces thing, now it's got a lot easier, but it's still tricky. Go in and kind of dig into it and try and do it explicitly manually rather than just saying letting it kind of suggest them for you, and it's very hard to find things. So I don't know. I think this new one, I haven't looked at the iOS one yet, but the iPad one is definitely a step back in the right direction. It's a lot easier to use, a lot cleaner.
Speaking of search, though, they put the search button back at the bottom of the screen, and that was my only, I think, standing complaint from the iOS 18 Photos app. It's now easy within reach, and you tap it and it automatically brings up the keyboard and everything. That's fantastic. Apple Intelligence features now in Image Playground. You can use ChatGPT to create images in a variety of styles. How do we feel about that?
Angry.
Image playground.
I like Grok, for images. I think that one's been the one I've used. ChatGPT, I haven't actually tried it for images. Has anyone tried it? Is it any good for images? ChatGPT?
I've never even thought to ask it for an image. I mean,
Yesterday, I tried that in Image Playground, and I just gave it an image, and it said, "Your daily limit of images has been reached." So,
what it should say is your daily limit of liters of water wasted while generating these images has been reached.
Yeah, I like that better. Yeah, you can translate text in messages, FaceTime, and phone calls. Good
I haven't tried it yet. That seems very useful, though. I'm keen to give that a go, actually. And in fact, I have a use case for it. So
yeah, I send a lot of text to people, because I live in Spain, so I'm sending text in Spanish. I would send them in Catalan, but there's no help. There's still not Catalan translation in iOS. But a lot of I prefer to just write in English and then let the translation happen, and then go and correct it, because it's just a lot quicker than writing in a foreign language for me. And it's a pain to have to highlight everything, hit the translate, to work on the text, then paste it back in, or you can tell it to replace with the translated text, but that doesn't work in the Mail app, for example. So yeah, I think this is a really, really good feature. That and the translation stuff in video calls, FaceTime calls, seems absolutely amazing. I mean, I speak to my partner's parents on call sometimes, when she's around, and I don't know, I don't really say much because partly her dad goes on and on, so don't want to encourage him. But
so they speak Catalan.
Yeah, and I understand it, and I speak Catalan and Spanish back to them. I understand them very well, but we don't really have great conversations, and I think that this would be really helpful because
if Apple only supported Catalan, please.
Well, it would be fine with Spanish. Although it would be a bit weird for them to speak Spanish to me because they just don't. But I think one of the use scenarios in the keynote was that you would speak to your loved ones in a foreign language, and I was like, well, if they're really your loved ones, couldn't you be bothered to learn their language? Yeah. But then I started thinking, there's actually that's me.
Well, what I would really like is because I'm still trying to learn Spanish myself, living in Spain, and so when I write things in Spanish to force myself, I don't want to write things in English and get Siri to translate it. I want Siri to tell me off when I write something wrong. That's what I really want. I want them to have corrections for people that are terrible at language, to just oh, did you mean this? And I would like a lot more of hand-holding
Senor Clippy,
as I try to do it myself.
So we also have the new Apple Games app. Some people are thinking maybe this would be they would be separating the App Store into an App Store and a Game Store. Now, this is pretty much Game Center as an app, and also you can find what your friends are playing, and you can read the editorial stuff and see the top App Store games. I'll be honest, I don't really understand what this is for or why I would use it or open it, because if I want to go play a game, I'm not going to open a Games app first. I'm just going to open the game I want to play. How do we feel? Am I just misunderstanding something?
I have a conspiracy theory about this.
Yeah.
I think that it might be their way of keeping control of the App Store, of the games part of it, which is where they make all the money from their in-app purchases for children's gambling games. And because Europe's obviously going to force them to open up the App Store. They're already doing it. And so if they can split off their games section, then if they're selling game subscriptions and stuff through this app instead, they can argue that, okay, this is games, and that's what Sony does, that's what the Xbox does. It's a different model. It's a console model, and we should be allowed to have a lot more control over it.
So have they moved the games out of the App Store and into the Games app?
No, but I think that might be what this is moving towards.
This is an intermediate step, you mean? Yeah.
I saw something like that on X, and it made a lot of sense to me.
I don't know. Well, if that's what they're moving towards, they haven't done that yet, and I'm kind of not sure why, because now I've just learned, well, I don't need to use the Games app or look in there.
Can I delete it?
I think if they were serious about getting into games, then they need to buy a studio. I mean, Microsoft's been on a shopping spree, and Apple hasn't really bought anything in this area. And I think the only way to get AAA games onto all their platforms is to just buy a studio and make it happen, like they have with Apple TV Plus.
Well, that's not true. They bought a studio. They bought the 2-person game studio that made Sneaky Sasquatch.
Did they?
Yeah.
Well, there's a AAA title for you.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on to watchOS 26. We have Workout Buddy that provides you encouragement during your workout. How do we feel about that?
Oh, God.
I'm really relieved about it, because I was genuinely worried that they were going to do virtual doctors and virtual fitness coaches. And, for all the reasons that I said last week, I think it's dangerous, and it's not scientific, and it's like lying to users, and it would have sucked. And so I'm really happy that Apple hasn't done this. And what they've done instead is something that's simpler and fun, and I think people will get something out of it. So it's really just, and it's one of the things in the article I wrote for Cultmac this week. I pointed out that if you remember Nike Plus iPod, Apple's original foray into fitness, it had people like Lance Armstrong giving you these attaboy messages. This was a different era, right? But it had Lance Armstrong. When you finished a workout, he would say, "Whoa, that was a great workout. Good job, buddy.
Time to transfuse your blood."
Yeah. You must be on something. And so it's really bringing back that idea that they had in the original Nike Plus iPod Sport kit of like these attaboy messages at the end of workouts. But the only difference is now they can obviously put an AI spin on it, and it can identify things about your behavior, like if it was a personal best or the first time you did a 10K, and summarize things and give you encouragement. And I think, why not? I think it might be a little bit of fun. I don't think it's a big feature, but I think it's a fun feature.
I saw somewhere they were saying that it's actually really quite an ambitious piece of software, because it's pulling in from 3 or 4 different sources. It's agentic. It's running on a language model or something like that, I think. And it's actually quite an ambitious piece of AI. They say people at Apple's behind an AI, but here is an example of actually a really sophisticated piece of AI that, with a real world use case that's being done really well. Actually, I'm really kind of not looking forward to it. Like, the last thing I want to hear is some machine congratulating me when I take a bike ride. I can already tell I'm going to be irritated by it.
It looked irritating in the thing. Hey, that was a great set or whatever. Yes, good God.
Yeah, it's like full English breakfast again, Leander.
Yeah, I know. It definitely is. It's definitely not going to appeal to the British mentality, for sure.
I can imagine it's probably not quite as annoying as what they did in the keynote, because in the keynote they want to show you like all of the different things it might say, and so it's just like one thing after another.
It was annoying,
and
right?
I hope it's not like that.
They were really long messages. Dreadful. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't expect to like it whatsoever, but I'm curious enough to try it the next time I mow my lawn, because I do that as an outdoor walk workout.
Your pace is incredibly stable. Exactly 4.2 miles per hour.
Your 6th walk around your house. Is something wrong?
Yeah, right. Why are you walking in circles?
Does it also give you the noise alerts?
I don't think it does, no. I mean, I just have a little push mower, so it isn't very loud.
I see.
And I also use noise-canceling earbuds in.
One of the things I'm really curious about is if it can actually work, because the HealthKit API, which all Apple's fitness stuff is based on, is incredibly slow. I mean, you'd notice this if you open the fitness app, and it just doesn't show you anything for ages. And then it takes a good 30 or 40 seconds for your workouts to appear, which is just totally unacceptable, but it's been like that for years. Only Apple could get away with something as subpar as that. And anyway, so that's an aside. It's so slow, for example, if I do a half marathon in my training, and I'm wondering if I got the half marathon medal, those little medals that Apple gives you?
No.
And so I'll go in, okay. Well, Charlie, you do. If you run any meaningful distance, you get a nice little medal. And the thing is, it takes hours for those to show up in the fitness app. So I'll go in and look at the workout, and it's like, well, I run a half marathon, and there's no medal there. And check the next day, and it's finally shown up. So I'm really curious of sure, they've got this LLM which is reading the data from the HealthKit API, but the HealthKit API is terrible. So, is it really going to know what workout you just logged right at the end of a workout? Like, that to me implies, and I really hope this is true, that they've improved HealthKit in some way.
Well, I'm going for a bike ride this weekend, so I'll report back and let you know.
I would be interested to hear.
We also have adjustable notification volume relative to the ambient volume of the room, the wrist flick gesture. I think that's really cool. It's like the reverse of the like raise to wake. You flick it the opposite way and it just shuts up for a second. I think that's fantastic. And the Notes app.
Yeah. I'm so looking forward to Notes. Yeah, I am thrilled because when I go for a run, I leave my phone at home and I'm always thinking about stuff. I'm thinking about creative projects and things, and I have an idea and I want to write it down. And at the moment, I use the Voice Memos app on my watch. And, people give me funny looks. I'm standing there, by the beach and I'm talking to my Apple Watch. And this, I think, is going to be... it's actually the feature of watchOS 26 I'm most excited about, that I can finally take notes when I'm out on a run.
I'd just like to say something about the wrist gestures. You remember back when people first started using Bluetooth headsets and hands-free, and they would be having a conversation in the street. You still see it now, but we're more used to it. And they'd just be walking around gesturing, and you think, is that crazy person talking to themselves, or are they on a phone call? And now we've got with the shaky head and the nodding gestures with the AirPods, and now the wrist thing. I mean, you're going to see people wandering along, and you're going to wonder, they're just going to be communicating, and they're going to be like this in the street.
They're starting a fight. Yeah, I think if you flick your wrist, it's like you're throwing a punch at someone, is what it looks like.
Has anyone actually used, nod to answer or no to dismiss? Has anyone...
No one ever calls me, so...
Yeah, right.
Moving on to tvOS 26. It has Liquid Glass and a new Profiles API. Moving on to macOS Tahoe. Do we have anything to say about tvOS? It's disproportionate because I use it, every day watching shows, but like it gets virtually no attention from Apple at all. It's maybe the biggest amount of disparity there between care and usage.
Kind of just want it to get out of the way, though, right? So you can watch your TV programs.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I think that's what's great about it. If you use the default digital interface in a TV these days, it's full of spam. And, I was reading someone the other day who was moaning on Blue Sky about how every time he turns on his TV, he gets this, 5-second ad that he can't skip. And all this stuff is, so annoying. And, the great thing about Apple TV, as far as I'm concerned, is that they don't mess with it. And, I think I'm glad that they don't particularly push any of their commercial stuff in there. It's just kind of, it does one thing, and I think it does it really well.
My friends all think I have this horrible allergy against advertising, but I don't feel like I'm the crazy one. It's like, do you see what's happening? You scroll through your phone and you just see ad after ad on TikTok. You open up your crummy Roku TV and it's just showing you ads, and it goes to the screensaver and it's just showing you ads. It's insane. I don't understand how the rest of the world functions, but
I love Roku for watching TV, but the best thing about tvOS is the screensavers. I mean, me and my wife have sat there and watched screensavers. We've literally sat there and watched the screensavers because they're so mesmeric.
Yeah. Graham has them on his
they
TV,
are fabulous.
And they're amazing.
Yeah.
The remarkable thing about tvOS 26 is the fact that it still runs on the first modern Apple TV from 2015 with an A8 chip inside. That was the chip that was in the iPhone 6, I think, and it's still running a fork of iOS, basically iOS 26, which is just insane. I think that it's just that first model that doesn't get liquid glass because the A8 is just, too underpowered for that in particular, but it's remarkable the longevity that device has had.
But surely the hardware is going to be not long for this world, because the tvOS app, running everywhere now. I mean, that's mostly how I interact with it, because it's native on my TV, and you can get it on. What do they just rolled out for? Some new platform, forget which. But the hardware doesn't seem to make much sense anymore, does it?
You will have to prise that out of my grubby little mitts. I love the Apple TV because it doesn't have ads, and You can use, like, say, the interface that a Samsung TV comes with, but you have to disconnect it from the internet, because as soon as you connect your TV to the internet, it's tracking you every which way, and it's spewing all these ads into your home. And Apple TV doesn't do that. And so to me, it has genuine value.
Moving on to macOS 26 Tahoe, colored folders from macOS 7 come back. You can color a folder however you want. You have new continuity features, live activities in the phone app, the super-powered Spotlight. Leander, you're running macOS Tahoe. How do you feel about it?
Well, I like the look of it. It definitely, looks really beautiful. I haven't used so many features because, like I said, I couldn't get any work done. But and Charlie, like before, were we talking about this before the show or during the show?
No, I think we spoke about it just earlier.
Are we excited about macOS Tahoe? Like I'm concerned about the liquid glass design on the Mac. I don't feel like I've been a fan of how Alan Dye has been redesigning the macOS interface, like making all the title bars less consistent, removing the functionality from elements like notifications until you hover your mouse over them.
Have they fixed that
in
Tahoe? Probably.
They did not. Notifications are still like blank buttons that don't do anything until you hover your cursor over them, unfortunately. I was kind of hoping, like, with this, I mean, it makes sense. Like, they're unifying the design style, so it's going to be a little bit like less, traditional Mac-like and more iPad-like, bringing them all together like that. But I'm also not convinced on that look of the new look of the sidebar that's like inset and hovering over the shape of the window, and then you have like the traffic light buttons that are inside the floating sidebar. It looks a bit weird to me.
It reminds me of when we had drawers that would like pop out the side of windows. It's like it's a bit. It's not the same thing because it doesn't stick out the side, but in a way, it's kind of. It's an annoying thing. It's a thing that's there and you want it to go away. Whereas if you just have a regular sidebar, it's part of the setup.
Yeah, I honestly think the drawers are better than like the sidebars that cover up half the content of the window. Yeah. Like in the music app on the Mac, which is just like the epitome of all of their poor design choices coming together. Like you hit like the cue button or like the lyrics button. And if the window isn't big enough, it covers up half of the music window. And all right, well, now I just can't browse my music while I'm looking at the lyrics. If it opened up the opposite way, then it would make the window bigger and it would expand when it needed to. I mean, that's like the whole modularity of the macOS interface is what made like classic macOS great. I mean, you look at Windows and it's like, in the File Explorer, they don't really have an equivalent to Quick Look, but it's like, well, you can turn on the preview pane, which makes your entire like Explorer window smaller all of the time, and half of the time when you don't have a file selected, it's just showing nothing. Well, I mean, the whole point of the Mac is it's modular. Like, on the Mac you select a file and then you can just hit the space bar and get that quick look interface. That's always been like the pinnacle of macOS user interface design. And I feel like this new class of software designers at Apple are losing sight of that in a way.
Yeah, I think it's a shame as well that you touched on that a lot of these new apps are being developed in Catalyst for Mac. And I don't really understand why Apple's doing that because, they have unlimited resources and they tell us that the future is Swift UI and that you can write once in Swift UI and then adapt that user interface to all Apple's different platforms. Well, why doesn't Apple do that? Why are they, porting iOS apps to the Mac rather than building native apps with Swift UI? Because if Apple can't be bothered to do that, then who is going to do that?
Well, on the other hand, though, the Messages app on the Mac was terrible until they just brought the iPhone one across. Then it was great. So, the Messages app lacked all kinds of features. I mean, it was fine, but it lacked a lot of the features that you got on the iOS version. And then when they used, I guess, was it a Catalyst version or however they did it with Swift?
It was Catalyst, yeah.
And now you have the same thing. And I wouldn't say that. I mean, Apple has unlimited resources when it comes to money, but not in terms of hiring. Not in terms of engineers necessarily. And just hiring more engineers to finish a project just makes it take longer.
That's true. But I feel like if you look at what Apple does rather than what they say, then the solution is clearly to use Catalyst for Mac to port iOS apps to the Mac. It's not to actually develop apps from scratch in Swift UI.
I mean, the actual like pool of, Mac native developers is shrinking as more people like, learn iOS and Swift and SwiftUI development. Like the pool of people who understand like the next AppKit APIs and the people who genuinely understand how to build great native Mac apps is shrinking, or moving to Apple, or working for companies that Apple is buying, or they're just, indie developers making one-off things like, Overcast. Like the actual pool of people who can make great Mac apps is getting smaller and smaller every year.
Plus they have to live in the Bay Area because Apple refuses to let anybody work remotely now.
Yeah. But as like these designs are converging, like granted, like the need for people who need to build their Mac app using AppKit instead of UIKit through Catalyst or SwiftUI, like the difference between those apps is rapidly shrinking. Like, I haven't used macOS Tahoe yet, but it seems like, Podcast, which was, or, Apple News, like these early Catalyst apps are much more similar to like, true native Mac apps because they're all just looking the same as each other now.
Do you guys like the new Finder icon? People are losing their minds over that.
To me, all the new icons look a bit fuzzy to me. Because I think I was playing with this. Apple has given developers this icon creator tool. Have you played with that? And
Icon Composer, yeah, I installed it. I'm surprised that Icon Composer still runs on Sequoia, so I was tooling around with it a little bit.
But I think if you take your logo and you stick it onto an icon in liquid glass, it just makes the edges look a bit fuzzy. And I think when you talk about the Finder icon, to me, one of the issues is low contrast in colors. And the other is that the sort of edges are a bit fuzzy. And I think it makes it doesn't pop in the way that it used to. And I think that's actually the liquid metal tools that the liquid glass tools they're using to construct it.
It looks better on like the actual icon than in the Icon Composer app, because in Icon Composer you're looking at it like, blown up filling your screen. And so like what's supposed to be like a 1 pixel or 2 pixel wide if you have a Retina display, like that little what's supposed to be that sheer like specular highlight around the edge, then looks a little blurry. It does look nicer when I see like actual screenshots of it, except the Finder face, which has the colors flipped.
Right, why did they do that?
I can see like what they're trying to do where like, traditionally the left half is blue, the right half is white. And they're trying to make like, the right half of it look like an actual like sort of Picasso face to where, it could either be the full face or the one face that's pointing in the direction, but they need to flip the colors. They could just reverse the colors of how they have it now. And then it would look so much better to all of the old school Mac people like the rest of us.
It is awful. I'm looking at it now. It's horrible.
Well, there was also a riot when the first time they changed it was back when in the 2000s sometime, right? There was that caused people to lose their minds. I quite liked it. As a little icon anyway, on the desktop. When it's small, I thought it looked pretty good.
I'm not opposed to like that. The other thing is on the Mac, they're forcing all of the icons to be squircles. You can't have parts of the icon like breaking the barrier as you can right now because they want all of these icons to be unified across the whole system. And I guess they'd rather just force Mac icons into squircles than allow iOS icons to like break their squircle shape. And I don't mind that at all. A lot of people are, upset about that. I think that's okay. It's not a big difference. But why did they reverse the color palette? It just doesn't make any sense.
The Finder icon used to be the System 7 icon, didn't it? I think maybe they introduced it with System 7.1 or something like that. And to me, it goes back a way, but it doesn't go back all the way. And I think they only introduced it when they did the third-party licensing of macOS. So if you bought like a third-party Mac, they didn't want to put an Apple logo on it, so they designed this other logo for the macOS system. And then when macOS 10 came out, and they'd scrapped the third-party licensing, they repurposed that Mac logo to become the Finder logo.
Mm-hmm.
I've just pasted a picture of previous Finder icons into the Slack chat, and it starts off with, well, they all look the same. The design is the same. It's just the colors really have changed around it. How the colors work it goes from black and white at the first one through various shiny and lickable versions,
They should just flip the colors. I'm going to file a feedback about that. Is that all we have to say about macOS? Oh, this is the last. macOS Tahoe is the last version on Intel Macs. So pour one out for your 2020 MacBook Air.
Yeah, or your 20, or the Mac Pro that you bought 2 years ago for $6,000.
Yeah. iPadOS 26. We have the freeform windowing. Charlie, you've tried it out. How do you feel?
I like it. I really like it. It's way better than what's it called? I've never used it.
Stage Manager.
Stage Manager. That's it. I tried to use it a bit. And I just found it too annoying. It just didn't behave like you wanted it to. You know, you'd have to have special. They explicitly make special groups of apps and things. Well, let's not talk about that because I'm just getting angry. But the new one is really nice. I mean, it works exactly how you'd think. You launch an app, and it launches full screen, but then you can grab the little handle in the corner, in the bottom right corner, and make it almost any size you want. That depends more on the app. Like, so some apps still only run in full screen, and you can make those into windows, but you can't change the shape of them. They still kind of they stay in like portrait or landscape shape.
I think with iPadOS 26, Apple is trying to encourage more developers to break their apps free of like the fixed size classes. Like if you update your iPad app for iPadOS 26, they should all be eventually like freely resizable.
Well, that's a natural extension of what they've been doing for years anyway, trying to stop, trying to make people. So your app, if they bring in a new screen size for something, then your app will just work with it. Yeah, it has the things that I really like, apart from just being able to arrange your windows around wherever you want and drag and drop between them, or just watch what's going on in the window in the background. You can see messages coming in and keep an eye on it while you're reading something else, which you could do before, by in a split screen or something like that. But that was just that was a pain. The split screen is something. Or the multitasking stuff in general is something I always had to switch off on friends' iPads because they'd drag a link in Safari, and instead of tapping it, and then they'd end up with a little slide over window, and they're like, how do I get rid of this? And then they kind of just give up on it, and they'd have lots of slide overs around, well, alternate ones. So then there's the Mac traffic light buttons. The red, yellow, and green buttons for Windows, which are a little bit weird. I like that it's there, definitely. Being able to minimize things down. But the red. So what's the difference between the red one and the yellow one on the iPad? It turns out that the red one actually does force quit the app, as if you had swiped it up in the multitasking view.
Oh, really? That's useful to know.
Yeah, I think that's the
It doesn't
case.
even do that on the Mac. It just closes the window, but keeps the app running.
Yeah,
so that's weird.
Yeah, this one kind of because the behavior is the same. If you press the red one or the yellow one on the iPad OS 26 now, they both just do the same. The window disappears, and one kills the app and one doesn't. Apparently,
I think the look of it is a little weird. You have the 3 traffic light buttons, but they're minimized inside like a concentric like panel that they sit on top of. Like they sit on a button, and then you tap the button, and then they get slightly bigger, but not actually that much bigger. And then you can like tap them again. Like, why not just have them like the full size all the time? It's weird to me.
that's Alan Dye for you. He doesn't want you to have anything on the screen, anything but content. That's it.
But you do still see them all the time. They're just like slightly tiny and inset inside a little.
I agree. That's another thing.
Box.
Yeah, that is very annoying. I mean, it does seem pointless. But one thing that's nice about this is when you relaunch an app, then it remembers the window position, which is actually better than the Mac in some ways. That doesn't always happen. So it doesn't launch full screen again. On this old 2018 iPad Pro, you can have 4 different apps running, or 4 windows running at the same time. Active anyway. Any other ones will kind of grey out in the background, so they'll still be there and they'll activate when you use them again. The other thing is it's a lot less sluggish when with like previous efforts. It's been very difficult. You've had 2 or 3 apps running, and it's really obvious that you don't have enough RAM, and it's not. The app really isn't running. But now it actually feels like the windows are there. And the final thing that is really good is menus. So if you swipe down from the top, one is that stupid little lozenge is gone. That little kind of bar that was always in the way of the middle of the top of the screen. That's gone now. So yeah, you swipe down from the top, or do it by pushing your mouse button up to mouse cursor up to the top, and then doing it again. Then the menu shows up, and it's exactly what you'd expect. A lot of the stuff is not there. A lot of the stuff is not. I don't know, grayed out. There are a lot of grayed out options, even in Apple's apps, which I guess is normal. But sometimes it's you think, well, how do I get to this option if I can't get it from the menu? Because these have been taken, I guess, from the holding down the command key. There was a kind of an apologetic menu in previous versions of iPadOS.
Why are they grayed out? Why are a bunch of options grayed out?
Well, because you can't tap them. Same as on the Mac menu bar.
Well, right, but that doesn't make any sense.
Well, if you haven't got something on your clipboard, then you can't paste it, right? So the paste option is still there, but you just just grayed out.
And even so, like before, like the ability to add like keyboard shortcuts and like menu, the ability to build like a menu bar set of commands on the iPad was kind of an obscure feature before, and I can't imagine like a lot of apps have like really taken full advantage of that.
No, plus that it's not up there all the time.
And that's where this feature set is coming from.
I have a theory, just going quickly back to the traffic lights, that I think that might indicate that with the next generation of iPads, they're going to have a finger hover feature. So it doesn't make sense when you have to tap twice to bring up the traffic lights. But I think it might be indicative that some of these controls that zoom will be neat when you have a finger hover. So as your finger gets closer to the screen, then some controls get larger and give you additional options. And so that, to me, I think is a clue of where they're going. Because one of the issues is they're trying here to make the iPadOS Mac-like. But because you've got big stubby fingers rather than a precise pointer, then the controls are much bigger. And when I see the iPad Pro running iPadOS 26 in this multi-window mode, it looks like a Mac with a tiny screen because the controls are so vast relative to the size of the windows. And I think if they introduce a kind of finger hover gesture that sort of enlarges the controls that your finger is going towards, that might be some way that they're actually going to salvage a little bit of screen space. So I thought it might be a clue of where they're going with their UI.
How would it know about your finger hovering though?
I think actually there's some electrostatic things that you can detect with finger proximity to a sensor. So I think you could do it that way.
One thing.
Well, it does it with Apple Pencil, doesn't it?
Yeah. And if you use a menu, a mouse, or the Magic Keyboard with the trackpad,
you've got the hover, yeah.
Yeah, and if you mouse over the traffic lights, they automatically get bigger. You don't have to tap those.
Yeah.
One thing that Graham asked me about when I was like a couple of days ago when I was trying this out is whether or not you can drag and drop things onto app icons in the dock of the iPad now. And I tried. I just dragged a photo from my Mac's desktop across onto the iPad, this with continuity, and dropped the photo onto the preview icon of the new preview app, and it just opens.
Well,
oh wow,
it's pretty neat.
Amazing.
Well, it opens the preview app. It doesn't always open the picture, but maybe that's a bug, or maybe it's not going to work.
Okay.
You mentioned that you can have like 4 apps on screen until like the 5th app in the background becomes like grayed out. I do know that scales with how much RAM your iPad has. So if you have an iPad with more gigabytes of RAM, you can have more. I think if you have one of the new ones with 8 gigabytes of RAM, you can have 12 windows active at once.
Yeah, I read on a discussion thread somewhere about that. Yeah, somebody was using like an M4 iPad, and they didn't, they had so many on their screen that it was ridiculous. You couldn't see them all anyway.
I think they might have nailed it with iPadOS 26. I think Charlie and I often have arguments about iPad because I like iPad the way that it was, and I felt like Charlie always wanted iPad to be like a Mac. And so when I heard about this, I thought, I'm worried if they're going to ruin the iPad by making it like a Mac. But from what I've seen, I think that they've maybe found... I think it's maybe the best thing that they announced at WWDC this week, and it's the smartest thing that they've done, because somehow I think they've managed to preserve the simplicity of iPadOS for people that want to have that full window experience, plus added this stuff for people that want it to be a bit more Mac-like. And I could almost imagine that I might use it both ways because, they both appeal to me. And so I think they've really nailed it.
Exactly, yeah. In my limited, 3 hours experience of it, that's exactly what I did. You can have it both ways, and it is good to be able to switch between them.
Yeah, and you just switch by dragging the window to full screen again, or tapping the green button, and then you're back in. Yeah. It works really nicely.
What I've always disliked about Stage Manager is that it feels like running Stage Manager just wastes a lot of screen space, especially if you only have like the 11-inch iPad. Like, you can't have really 3 apps entirely on screen at once because it leaves that white area around them and it tries to rearrange the windows for you. I've always said that like what I want is I just want a more supercharged split screen view, because at that time I never believed that they would actually go and implement the full macOS thing. But like this is even better than that, because you can, especially with the gestures that make it super easy to tile windows, you can just throw one window on the left half of the screen, one on the right half of the screen, then you can like drag it up into be a quarter and like fill the other quarters. Like this is much better than I ever thought they would do.
What happened to the rumor that they were going to do something similar with the iPhone? Though you plug your iPhone into an external monitor and then it would bring up like a little mini Mac OS for you. See, I was really looking forward to that.
Absolutely nothing.
Huh?
They did absolutely nothing.
Yeah, nothing.
That feature does not exist.
Dream on.
Could still happen.
And on that note, maybe we should switch over to the prediction game results.
Oh yeah, let's do that.
So last week we dropped down our predictions for the event, and we have to judge our results. You can find this table if you're listening. If you just go to my website, dgriffinjones.com, there'll be a link in the show notes where you can bring up all of our results and see them laid out. But we're going to run through them a little quick here.
Oh, boo.
Starting with the software section. All of us voted for these things. All of us get points. Glassy Vision OS inspired redesign across all platforms. Yes. All OS version numbers updated to 26. iPadOS gets menu bar and improved windowing features. All points across the board. Moving on, iOS also gets free.
Are you going to go through every one?
External displays. Really quickly.
I'm like, oh no, please. Why don't we just jump to the bottom?
iOS also gets freeform windowing and external displays. No, Lewis is the only person who voted against that. All of us were fooled. Lewis comes out ahead there. iOS lets users choose app icon shapes. So they did slightly change the radius of the squircle. It is slightly rounder than before, not the dramatic thing that was rumored, but no, they don't let you choose the shape. So a few of us lost that. Game Center, reinvented as Apple Games. They did introduce a new thing called Apple Games, but Game Center is still called Game Center. So,
Where's Ed Hardy? I need Ed Hardy.
Where's Ed Hardy? Exactly.
Next version of macOS is called macOS Tahoe. Yes. Support dropped for all Intel Macs? No, but they did announce that this will be the last one. Vision OS gets over 5 minutes of screen time. I counted. Vision OS got 8 minutes of screen time.
Wow.
So I get a point there. And that was actually, so everybody else voted against that except for me. And that was actually one of the points where a majority of our audience disagreed with us. I think over 80% of our listeners also thought that Vision OS would get more screen time. The Apple Intelligence section was a little poor here. Apple reintroduces smarter agentic Siri. They did say that they're still working on it, but kicked it down the can another year. Redesigned health app adds AI-powered recommendations. Thankfully, no. AirPods get live translation. Everything else got live translation except for AirPods. It's everywhere else, so
heartbreaking.
Maybe points to an upcoming AirPods release. No new hardware. We all get a lot of points for that. Event opens with a silly, lighthearted video. Yes. Apple plays a trailer for the F1 movie.
Oh,
boy, did they.
It wasn't really a trailer, was it? But
they showed off exclusive footage from the movie, and I think that counts as a trailer.
All right, then.
Apple name drops another big game coming to the Mac. They name dropped many of them. Event runs over 1 hour, 45 minutes. No, it was a pretty crisp 95 minutes, if you include that weird extra video at the end. So, the scores are Leander with 11, Graham and I with 13, Charlie with 14, Lewis with 15.
Yes.
Congratulations, Lewis.
Yes.
We have a
Even though I
winner.
got robbed on the one.
So, our listeners, a lot of listeners submitted
They always kill us.
predictions. With 18 points, Michael Dennis and Ian Williamson are 2 listener winners.
Well done.
And they had this to say. There's a spot on the forum where they can plug something or promote them in the case that they win. A lot of people wrote lovely messages for us, but a lot of people didn't win. Only these 2 people did. So Michael Dennis says, if you're reading this, I guess it means I'm a second-time winner. And that is true. Ian Williamson says, I'm playing trombone for the Pegs? I'm playing trombone for the Pogues.
For the
on
Pogues?
the US-Canada tour in September. Come to a gig.
Oh, wow.
Really?
That's badass.
That's wild.
Oh, is that a famous band? I don't,
The Pogues?
Oh, come on.
Come
Is
on.
that a famous band?
You can poke my home.
Right.
Okay, well,
That's
yeah,
an- that's
you can
an-
see
you have to
Ian
look that up.
Williamson and the Pogues.
Yeah, we're not going to spell that out.
Okay, I'll look it up after class. Oh, any final thoughts?
Did anyone watch the F1 haptic trailer?
Yeah.
I did, yeah. Looks fun.
What did you think of it?
The trailer looks neat, but I'm not terribly excited about the movie. It looks kind of generic, but the trailer was cool.
What about the haptic part, that your iPhone vibrating?
Oh yeah, that was neat.
I thought it was fine. I mean, it's definitely gimmicky, but I like Leander's idea of them making it so it works during the movie, and you sit on your phone during the movie. Return of the
A lot of people
Tangler.
watch movies on their phones. You'd be surprised. Well, I think that about wraps it up. That's all the CultCast we have for you all this week. But the fun continues. Lewis Wallace is on Twitter at Lewis Wallace. Leander Canny is at L Canny. And you can read his daily thoughts in the Cult of Mac Today newsletter, which you can find at newsletters.cultofmac.com. Thanks to Graham Bauer and Charlie Sorrell for joining us again. Graham Bauer is on Blue Sky at Graham Bauer. Charlie Sorrell is at Mr. Charlie on Mastodon. And you can hear them together on the Apple Core podcast. I'm on Mastodon and Blue Sky at D. Griffin Jones. And you can join the week-long discussion with me and the other devs on the Cult Club Discord by going to support.thecultcast.com. You can read all of our WWDC coverage and all of the articles we've talked about in the show notes and at cultofmac.com. This has been the CultCast, the best 30-plus minute Apple conversation you're going to hear all week long. New episodes of the CultCast come out every Thursday night. We'll have more special guests next week. Maybe some of these people will come back. Maybe they won't. Maybe we'll have to find a random stranger on the internet to come and fill in. I want to thank everyone for listening and for watching, and we will see you all next time. Have a great weekend. Say goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
So that's CultCast 702.
703.
703. I got so annoyed by that. Every single tag of every single segment of the show.
What?
So that's iOS 26.
What show is that? I haven't been listening to this show.
No, the Keynote. Apple's
okay.
Keynote.
Yeah.
Every single thing.
That was your Craig Federighi impression.
Well, it's every synthetic presenter they have. So that's...
Yeah.
And we can't wait for you to try it.
You're really impatient over there.